Imagine this not as a story, but as a situation you cannot wake up from. You sit at a table carved from black wood, its surface scarred by age and claw marks. The table stretches so far that candlelight dies before it reaches the other end. Shadows gather there, thick and watchful, and within those shadows something waits. Across the table is not a man, not even something that was a man. Its body coils unnaturally, long and serpentine, scales catching the light like wet stone. From its face hangs a heavy, muscular trunk that curls and uncurls as it breathes. Cracked tusks burst outward from its mouth, yellowed and sharp. Its hands end in talons designed not to grasp, but to end things. Its eyes are intelligent. That is what makes it unbearable. You are inside its castle. There is no exit, no hidden passage, no rescue coming. The walls do not echo. They absorb sound as if the structure itself is listening. You are not alone here, but you are never truly accompanied. Invisible servants move through the halls. You never see their faces. You never see anything, yet you feel them. Plates slide into place. Chairs shift behind you. Something brushes your shoulder as it passes. Sometimes, when the castle is quiet, they whisper, "You have been here a long time, weeks, maybe longer." The castle refuses to let time behave normally. Nights stretch until your thoughts blur. Days pass without markers. The outside world feels increasingly unreal. Every evening the ritual repeats. You dine with the creature. It speaks calmly, thoughtfully. It discusses art, music, morality, philosophy. It asks questions and waits for answers. It remembers what you say. And for brief, dangerous moments you forget what it is, until you look up, until your eyes meet that face, that body that should not exist. Your instincts recoil in terror, ancient and animal, screaming that you are prey trapped with something that chose not to eat you. At the end of every meal, the monster rises. It moves closer, silent despite its size. Its shadow crawls across the floor and wraps around your feet, and it asks the question every night, "Will you marry me?" Your answer matters more than your life, because this being owns everything here, including you. If it wanted you dead, you would not feel pain long enough to scream. And yet it has never harmed you. It has never touched you, never threatened you, never forced obedience. It provides comfort, luxury, safety, everything except the one thing you want. Freedom, so each night you answer the same way. No. And each night the monster turns away. The sound that follows rolls through the castle like a wound opening, not fury, not violence, loneliness. It hurts to hear it. But you still cannot say yes, because it is a monster, and this is not the fairy tale you were taught. This is not dancing furniture and smiling magic. This is not a prince waiting politely beneath fur and fangs. This is the original story, written in 1740 by Gabrielle-Suzanne Barbot de Villeneuve. A long, unsettling Gothic horror novel later stripped down, softened, and disguised as romance. This is the version history tried to forget. And in the dark documentary series, we're going back to it. We're going to uncover what really happened inside that castle, the unseen servants, and the secrets they murmured in the dark. The forbidden chamber beauty was warned never to enter. The enchanted mirror that showed her family wasting away far from her reach. The prince who came to her dreams night after night, gentle and human, and the truth binding him to the beast. We will confront beauty's sisters, their cruelty, their envy, and the punishment that still holds them. They are not dead. They are aware. encased in stone, watching forever. We will return to the rose garden, to the moment Beauty's father made a single desperate choice. The bargain that spared his life and the warning that followed. If you do not return, I will perish. And finally, we will reach the night Beauty broke her vow. The beast collapsed among dying roses, the castle extinguishing itself piece by piece. The realization that arrived only when it was useless, and the words she spoke as he faded in her arms. But above all, we will answer the question this story was never meant to romanticize. Because Beauty and the Beast was never about love. It was written as instruction, a guide for young women in 18th century France, women sold into marriages with strangers. Older men, men they feared, men they were expected to endure. No escape, no refusal, no protection. The story told them the truth. You will be trapped with a monster. Learn how to survive it. Hope desperately that there is humanity beneath the horror. But if there isn't, if the beast never changes, what then? This is the horror that was always hiding beneath the fairy tale. In 1740, Gabrielle-Suzanne Barbot de Villeneuve did not write a children's romance. She wrote a nightmare wearing the mask of love, a story soaked in Gothic dread, a tale crowded with unseen spirits, cursed bargains, and psychological terror. 16 years later, another writer cut that story down. They stripped away the fear, removed the shadows, softened the monster, and handed what remained to children. That is the version you know, but the original still exists. Stranger, darker, far more disturbing, and tonight you are going to experience it. Before we cross the threshold of that haunted castle, understand this. Stories like this were never meant to comfort. They were meant to warn. They were meant to prepare people, especially young women, for realities they could not escape. For months, endless months, the beast asked Beauty the same question every single night. And every single night she said no, until the night she didn't. And that is when everything changed. That is when the real horror began. Tonight, we are going to find out what happens when you agree to marry a monster, when a curse finally breaks, when a castle reshapes itself, when invisible servants step into the light and you understand what they always were, when you learn that the gentle prince from your dreams and the creature from the dinner table were never separate beings at all. When sisters who betrayed you receive a punishment so cruel it forces you to question whether the so-called good fairy was ever truly good. We will explore a castle that should not exist, meet a creature that defies nature itself, watch a young woman forced to choose between her freedom and a monster's life. This is Beauty and the Beast as it was originally written. This is the version history tried to bury. This is the nightmare beneath the fairy tale. The beast is waiting in his castle. The roses are blooming in winter, and Beauty must answer a question with no good answer. Will you marry me? What would you say? Our story begins far from that cursed castle. In a great city in France in the early 18th century, there lived a merchant. A powerful man, a wealthy man, one of the richest in the city. His ship sailed to the East Indies, to the Americas, to the furthest reaches of the known world, returning heavy with silk and spice, jewels and rare goods. He had 6 children, 3 sons already learning the machinery of commerce, and 3 daughters. The 2 eldest daughters were exactly what society demanded: beautiful, fashionable, ruthlessly ambitious. They lived for spectacle and status and wanted more than comfort. They wanted power. They would not marry merchants no matter how rich. They wanted nobility, titles, royal circles. Suitors came constantly. They dismissed them all with contempt. Marry a merchant. How vulgar. They waited for princes who were never coming. The youngest daughter was different. Her name was Beauty. She was beautiful, yes, but she never seemed to notice. She was quiet, thoughtful, gentle. She stayed home. She read philosophy, history, literature. She played the harpsichord with quiet precision. She was everything her sisters were not: educated, humble, kind. And though she had suitors, her story and her sister's jealousy was only just beginning. The room had been prepared for him. A fire burned steadily in the hearth, its warmth sinking into stone that had known centuries of cold. The bed was turned down, heavy with fine linen softer than anything he had touched since his fall from wealth. Nightclothes lay folded neatly at the bedside, clean, elegant, impossibly new. The merchant undressed with shaking hands and slid beneath the covers. For the first time in months, his body rested in true comfort. But sleep did not come easily. He lay awake, staring into darkness, listening. The castle whispered, not loudly, not clearly, but constantly. Faint sounds moved through the walls, through the floors, through spaces where people should have been. He wondered where he was, who owned this place, and what price might be demanded for such generosity. Eventually, exhaustion dragged him into a shallow, uneasy sleep. Morning arrived without warning. Sunlight poured through tall windows, bright and clean. The storm was gone. The forest outside lay calm and untouched, as though the night had never happened. Fresh clothes awaited him, not his travel-worn garments, but new ones, tailored, perfectly fitted, fabric finer than he deserved. He dressed in silence and went downstairs. Breakfast waited in the dining room, fresh bread still warm, butter, jam, hot chocolate steaming gently in a porcelain cup. Invisible hands moved efficiently and silently, serving him as though this were the most natural thing in the world. He ate quickly, too quickly. Hospitality or not, this place terrified him. When he stepped into the courtyard, his heart skipped. His horse stood there, groomed, fed, calm, stronger than it had looked in months. The saddlebags were full, stocked with provisions for the road. The message was clear: you may leave. Relief flooded him. He mounted the horse and turned toward the gates. Then he stopped. He remembered Beauty's voice. Just a rose, father. Beside the courtyard lay a garden. He dismounted slowly and approached it. Despite the season, despite the snow covering the forest beyond, this garden lived. Roses bloomed everywhere. Red, white, pink, yellow, bushes heavy with blossoms, petals flawless and vibrant, breathing perfume into the cold air. The scent was overwhelming, sweet, almost intoxicating. The merchant stared. It was impossible. Roses did not bloom in winter, not like this. He hesitated. Then reason, or perhaps desperation, betrayed him. Surely the master of such a place would not miss a single flower. They had saved his life, fed him, clothed him, sheltered him. One rose was nothing. He stepped into the garden and reached for a single red bloom. The stem came free effortlessly, almost willingly. And then the sound shattered the morning. The merchant spun around. At the edge of the garden stood the beast. What faced him was not merely monstrous, it was nightmare-given flesh. A massive serpent's body coiled beneath it, thick and muscular, armored in scales that gleamed like oil. Rising from that coil was a torso almost human. Almost. The arms were too long, ending in claws curved and lethal. The chest was broad and furred, expanding with each breath. And the head, Enormous, twisted. An elephant's trunk hung from its face, flexing slowly. Tusks jutted from a mouth packed with fangs. Horns curved back from the skull. The skin was a sickening patchwork of fur, scales, and raw flesh. Yellow eyes, reptilian and slitted, fixed on him. Eyes that understood. The beast moved forward with fluid, impossible grace. When it spoke, its voice sounded like stone grinding against stone. "I saved your life." The merchant stumbled back, the rose slipping from his fingers. "I'm sorry," he stammered. "I didn't. I gave you shelter from the storm," the beast continued. "I gave you food, clothing, rest. I asked for nothing." It loomed over him, blocking the sun. "And you repay my hospitality by stealing from me." "It's just a flower," the merchant cried. "Just one rose. I didn't think," the beast laughed. "You enter a magical castle," it said. "You are served by invisible spirits. You see roses blooming in winter. And you did not think magic was involved. You did not think there would be consequences." The merchant collapsed to his knees. "Please," he sobbed, "I'll return it. I'll pay you, I'll do anything." The beast leaned down, its face filled his vision. The merchant smelled its breath, sulfur and rot and something ancient and wrong. "You will die for this," the beast said calmly. "That is the price for stealing from me." "No," the merchant wept. "Please, I have children, a family who needs me." "I do not care." Tears streamed down his face. "The rose wasn't for me," he whispered. "It was for my daughter. She asked for one thing, just a rose. I only wanted to make her happy." The beast did not move. The garden stood silent, and somewhere deep within the castle something listened. The beast pulled back, just slightly. And in that terrible yellow gaze something changed, not kindness, not mercy, interest. "Your daughter," the creature said slowly. "Tell me about this daughter." The merchant seized the moment like a drowning man grasping air. He spoke too fast, too desperately. "Her name is Beauty," he said. "She's young, she's good, kinder than anyone I've ever known. She's held our family together since we lost everything. She works harder than all of us, never complains, never asks for reward." His voice broke. "All she wanted was a single rose." The beast studied him in silence, then it spoke. "I will make you an offer." The merchant's heart slammed in his chest. "Anything," he whispered. "Return home," the beast said. "Tell your daughter what you have done." The merchant froze. "If she is willing to come here in your place," the beast continued, "to give her life for yours, you will go free." The world narrowed. "You want me to send my daughter to die?" "I want you to give her a choice," the beast replied calmly. "If she is truly as loving as you claim, perhaps she will come willingly." Its claws extended slightly. "But if none of your daughters come, then you will return here yourself." The words sank deep. "You have 3 months. If no daughter comes, I will come for you." The merchant trembled. "And if she does come?" he asked weakly. "If Beauty comes here," the beast said, turning away, "that will be between her and me." The decision was already made. The beast began to walk back toward the castle. "Your horse is ready," it called. "In your saddlebags you will find gold." The merchant stared. "Enough to restore some of your fortune," the beast added. "Consider it payment." A pause. "For your daughter's life." Another pause. "Or for your own." Then the beast vanished into the castle. The merchant stood alone in the rose garden. The red rose lay crushed at his feet. His entire body shook. He walked as if numb to where his horse waited. The saddlebags were heavy, heavy with gold, enough to change everything. Enough to return to the city, enough to restore their name. Blood money, the price of his child. He mounted the horse and rode away. When he passed through the gates, he turned back. The castle was gone. No towers, no walls, no lights. Only forest, as if it had never existed, but the gold was still there, and the air still smelled of roses. The merchant reached the cottage days later. Each mile weighed on him. The gold pulled at the saddle and even more at his soul. When he arrived, his family rushed out. Beauty stepped forward immediately. "Father," she said softly, "are you ill?" He looked at her, and something inside him broke. "I need to tell you something," he said. They gathered inside the cottage. The merchant told them everything. The storm, the castle, the invisible servants, the feast, the rose, and finally the beast. He described it in detail. The serpent body, the claws, the tusks, the trunk, the eyes. He told them of the sentence. And of the bargain. "One of my daughters must go to the castle," he finished, "or I must return in 3 months to die." Silence fell. Then the elder sisters exploded. "This is your fault. You and your stupid Rose. If you'd asked for something normal, we'd be rich again." Beauty listened. And as they shouted, something inside her became very still, very clear. "It is my fault," she said calmly. "I asked for the rose." She looked at her father. "Therefore I will go to the beast." "No," her father cried. "I will go," she repeated. "I will not let you die for my mistake." She turned to her sisters. "And I will not let you suffer for something I caused." Relief flickered across their faces. "When do I leave?" Beauty asked. Her father collapsed into tears. "You don't have to do this." "I do," Beauty said softly. "I am young, I am strong." And she did not yet know what the castle would demand of her. Each evening followed the same pattern. They dined together, the beast at one end of the long table, Beauty at the other. At first, Beauty could barely raise her eyes. The creature's appearance still made her stomach twist, still triggered something ancient and instinctive inside her, a voice that screamed danger, run, survive. But time does strange things to fear. Days passed. Then weeks. She did not grow comfortable, never that. But she grew accustomed. She learned to look at the beast without nausea rising in her throat. She learned to eat while it sat across from her. She learned to keep her hands from trembling when its claws scraped softly against porcelain. And they talked. The beast was astonishingly well educated. Beauty found herself thinking of it as he without realizing when the shift occurred. He knew literature, philosophy, history, music. He quoted Shakespeare and Voltaire with ease. He analyzed poetry, debated ethics, questioned morality with precision and depth. In conversation, it became dangerously easy to forget what he looked like. The voice never changed, still that grinding, unnatural resonance. But the thoughts behind it were subtle, curious, alive. One evening his gaze fell to the book Beauty had brought to the table. "You've read Montaigne?" he asked. "I'm rereading his essays," Beauty replied. "I find them comforting." "Comforting?" I would have said challenging. "They're both," she said after a moment. "He doubts everything, questions everything, but he does it with humor, with humanity. It reminds me that uncertainty is part of being human." The beast was silent. Then he spoke softly. "Tell me, Beauty, do you consider me human?" The question hung between them. Beauty looked at him, truly looked, at the coiled serpent body, the elephant's trunk, the claws capable of ending her life in an instant. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Your body isn't human, but your mind, your thoughts, the way you speak." She hesitated. "Those feel human to me." The beast studied her. "An interesting answer," he said at last. Most would simply say no. Most haven't dined with you every evening for weeks, Beauty replied. Something like satisfaction flickered across his terrible features. They returned to Montaigne, to philosophy, to books. And when dinner ended, Beauty realized something unsettling. She had almost enjoyed herself. Almost. Then the beast stood, as he always did, and Beauty's body tensed because she knew what came next. Beauty, he said, his voice steady, ritualized. Will you marry me? Every evening, the same question. No, Beauty answered gently. I won't marry you. The beast nodded just as he always did. No anger, no argument, no threat. Good night, Beauty. He left the dining room. And sometimes, though she tried not to listen, she heard him later, deep in the castle, roaring. A sound so heavy with anguish and loneliness that it pressed against her chest and made her throat ache. But still, she could not marry him, no matter how intelligent he was, no matter how kind. She could not marry a monster. At night, the prince came to her. In dreams, they walked together through the overgrown garden. They spoke for hours. He laughed easily, asked about her days, about the books she read, the rooms she explored. He told her stories of his life, though the details were always blurred like memories half forgotten. He never spoke of the beast, and Beauty never asked why. She was falling in love with a dream, with a man who vanished every morning when she woke. She knew how foolish it was. You could not build a life with someone who existed only in sleep. And yet, in a castle where the only waking presence was a nightmare given flesh, the dream prince was her only comfort. Her only joy. The weeks passed. Beauty grew accustomed to the castle, as accustomed as a prisoner could be. Her days belonged to books and endless corridors, her evenings to conversation with a monster she could not love, her nights to a prince who was not real, and every evening the beast asked the same question, "Will you marry me?" And every evening Beauty gave the same answer, "No," until one day everything changed. Beauty had been in the castle for 3 months when she finally discovered the true power of the mirror in her room. She had used it before casually to reassure herself that she was still herself, still human, still real. But one evening after a particularly lonely dinner, she stood before it longer than usual. She thought of her family, of her father. "I wish I could see them," she whispered. "Just to know they're all right." The mirror trembled, and her reflection vanished. In its place, she saw her father. He sat alone in the cottage, slumped in his chair beside the fire. His shoulders were bowed, his face hollowed. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, as if grief itself were consuming him from the inside out. He did not move. He stared into the flames with empty eyes, and even through the glass, Beauty could see it. He believed she was dead. Beauty's chest constricted. The image shifted. Her brothers appeared next. They worked the fields outside the cottage, stronger now, steadier. The beast's gold had saved them from starvation, had given them back a future of sorts. But their faces were heavy. Then the mirror changed again. Her sisters. They stood in a bright, elegant room in town, dressed in fine clothes, hosting a social gathering. They laughed. Young men leaned close. Wine flowed, music played. They looked happy, carefree. Beauty stared. Something cold settled deep in her chest. The image faded. Her reflection returned to the mirror, pale, hollow-eyed, trapped. That night Beauty did not sleep. Her father's grief haunted her. She could not allow it. At dawn, she sought out the beast. She found him in the conservatory, standing among impossible flowers. "Beast," she said softly, "you don't usually seek me out during the day," he replied. Is something wrong? I have a request, she said. A favor, anything within my power. I want to visit my family, she said, just for a week. The beast went still. My father is ill, she continued, dying, I think, from grief. He believes I'm dead. You want to leave, the beast said. Just for 7 days, Beauty insisted. I'll return, I promise. The silence stretched. If I let you go, the beast said slowly, you will never come back. I give you my word, Beauty said firmly. 7 days. The beast studied her. At last he spoke. I will allow it. Relief surged, then froze. If you do not return in exactly 7 days, he said, I will die. My life is bound to yours. He looked at her fully. I will die alone in this castle. Beauty saw the truth in his eyes. Why, she whispered, that is not something I can explain. Then quietly, will you return, Beauty? Yes, she said. I swear it. He removed a ring from around his neck and placed it in her hand. Turn it 3 times, he said. You will be transported instantly. And when you are ready to return, turn it 3 times again. 7 days, he said softly. That night Beauty packed lightly. She chose a gown that would let her father see she was well. She slipped the ring onto her finger and turned it 3 times. The world twisted. Then she stood before the cottage. Her father opened the door and stared at her. Beauty, he whispered. She stepped into his arms. You're alive, he sobbed. Yes, father. Her brothers crowded around her. He let me come, Beauty said gently. He's been kind to me. Her sisters appeared in the doorway. They stared, and something flickered in their eyes, not joy, something else, something sharp. The days passed. Beauty stayed close to her father. Her sisters grew attentive, too attentive. On the 6th evening, they begged her to stay one more day, and Beauty agreed. The 8th day passed, then the 9th. On the 10th night, Beauty dreamed. She stood in the rose garden. The roses were dying, and the beast lay among them, motionless. You broke your promise, he whispered. She woke gasping. At dawn, she turned the ring. The castle was dark. She ran through dead halls until she found him, cold still. I'm here, she cried. I came back. Too late, he whispered. Because I love you, Beauty said. The truth struck her like lightning. I love you, she repeated. I should have said yes. I should have married you, she lifted his head. Marry me? Hope flared in his eyes. Yes, she said. With all my heart. She kissed him, and the curse shattered. Light erupted. The monster unraveled, and where the beast had been, a man lay trembling. The prince, Beauty whispered. The same, he said. The curse split me, beast in body, human in spirit. But you loved me anyway. The castle transformed. Whispers became voices. Invisible servants stepped into the light, and a fairy appeared. You have proven yourself, she said. Then she revealed the truth. Beauty was not a merchant's daughter. She was a princess born of a fairy and a king, hidden to protect her. The choice was hers, and Beauty chose love. She married the prince freely. The curse ended, and the nightmare closed, not with innocence preserved, but with truth revealed, love chosen, and consequences paid. They will watch, the fairy said calmly. They will watch your happiness, your wedding, the life you build. Her gaze lingered on the stone figures, and perhaps after years, decades, centuries of witnessing the joy born of kindness, they may finally understand what they lacked. Can they ever be freed? Beauty asked quietly. When they learn true virtue, the fairy replied. When their hearts change, when they feel genuine remorse. She paused. It may take a year, it may take 1,000. That choice belongs entirely to them. Beauty stepped closer to the statues. Her sisters' faces were frozen in terror, mouths parted mid-scream, eyes wide with the knowledge of what they had lost. Despite everything, Beauty felt pity. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I wish you'd been kinder. I wish we could have been true sisters." The statues did not answer. They never would. The next day, magic carried familiar figures into the castle courtyard. Her father, her brothers. The merchant wept when he saw her. "I thought you were dead," he said, his voice breaking. "When you didn't return after 7 days, I thought the beast had killed you." "I'm sorry," Beauty said softly. "I should have sent word." She smiled, truly smiled. "I'm safe, I'm happy. And I'm getting married." She introduced them to Philippe and told them the full truth, the curse, the transformation, the love that broke it. Her brothers were stunned, overjoyed. "A prince," her father murmured, shaking his head in disbelief. "My little Beauty marrying a prince." "There's more," Beauty said gently. She told him what the fairy had revealed of her birth, her hidden past, the truth of her blood. The merchant listened in silence. When she finished, he pulled her into his arms fiercely. "You are my daughter," he said. "I don't care whose blood you carry. I raised you. I love you. You are mine." "And you will always be my father," Beauty replied. The fairy ensured the merchant, and the brothers were provided for land, titles, security. They would live nearby. They would remain part of her life. They would never be forgotten. The wedding was unlike anything the kingdom had ever seen. Nobles arrived from distant lands. The castle blazed with light. Flowers filled every hall. Music echoed day and night. Beauty wore white silk and lace, a crown of roses woven into her hair. Philippe stood beside her in royal garments, no longer cursed, no longer alone. The fairy presided. When the prince kissed his bride, the castle erupted in celebration. The festivities lasted for days. Laughter, dancing, feasts without end. The cursed prince was restored. The haunted castle lived again. Under the stars, Beauty danced with her husband. They walked through the rose garden, now bursting with color and life. "Are you happy?" Philippe asked softly. "More than I ever believed possible," Beauty replied. "When I came here, I thought I was coming to die. I never imagined I would find love or myself." "I waited 10 years for you," Philippe said. 10 years as a monster. It was worth it." They kissed beneath the roses, and at the gates of the castle 2 stone figures stood watch, silent, unmoving, witnesses to the happiness they had tried to destroy. Perhaps one day they would learn. But tonight Beauty did not think of them. She had come to the castle as a prisoner. She remained as a queen. And far away in a small cottage at the edge of the forest, a father slept peacefully, knowing his daughter was alive, knowing she was happy, knowing she had found her ending. Now that we have descended through the full original darkness of Beauty and the Beast, the monster, the haunted castle, the psychological terror, the bargain, the curse, a question remains. Who could imagine something like this? What kind of mind creates a story about a young woman imprisoned by a serpent-bodied creature who asks her to marry him every single night? Her name was Gabrielle-Suzanne Barbot de Villeneuve. Born in Paris in 1695, she lived in a world where women had little power until fate intervened. Widowed young, she gained a rare freedom. As a widow, she could own property, conduct business, and publish under her own name. She entered the literary salons of 18th century France, spaces where women debated philosophy, politics, and art alongside men. And there she wrote. In 1740, she published Beauty and the Beast as a 187-page Gothic novella, part of a collection titled La Jeune Américaine et les Contes Marins. Not a children's tale, a psychological horror, filled with fairy politics, moral philosophy, invisible spirits, and monstrous truths about power, captivity, and survival. 16 years later, another writer stripped it down, cut away the darkness, simplified it, turned it into a moral fable for children. That version spread across Europe. Villeneuve's original was almost forgotten. Almost, but now you know it. The nightmare beneath the fairy tale. For more than 200 years, most people didn't even know this story existed. Not really. The original Beauty and the Beast, long, dark, and unsettling, was buried beneath generations of softened retellings. Only recently have scholars pulled it back into the light, studying it not as a children's fairy tale, but as something far stranger and far more disturbing. So what was Villeneuve really doing when she wrote this story in 1740? To understand that, you have to understand what marriage meant for women in 18th century France. Young women had no choice. Marriages were arranged entirely by fathers or male guardians. Decisions were based on money, alliances, titles, never affection. Girls as young as 14 or 15 were often married to men decades older. Strangers. Men whose habits, tempers, and desires were completely unknown. The wedding night was a nightmare. These young brides were expected to submit. There was no refusal, no escape. Once married, a woman became property. She had no legal rights and no protection if her husband was cruel. This was not exceptional. It was normal. Now read Beauty and the Beast again with that reality in mind. Beauty is forced to leave her home and live with a stranger whose appearance makes her physically ill. She must dine with him every night, speak with him, sit across from him, and every night he asks the same question. Will you marry me? Make this permanent. Bind yourself to me forever. At first she is terrified, repulsed, trapped. Over time something changes. She learns who he is beneath the appearance. She discovers intelligence, restraint, kindness. He gives her comfort within captivity, freedom within confinement. He never forces himself on her. Slowly, painfully, she learns to love him. This was not romance, it was instruction. A survival guide for women who would all become beauty. They would all be locked into lives with men they did not choose, men they feared, men whose authority loomed over them. The story told them, look for the person inside. Do not judge by appearance. Your monster may be kind. You may learn to love what you fear. Villeneuve could not imagine rebellion, so she offered endurance. Find kindness where you can. Build a life within the walls you are given. Hope your monster has a human heart. And beneath that lesson she wrote Gothic horror, haunted castles, invisible servants, locked rooms, curses, ritual, isolation, decay. Beauty's story is filled with everything Gothic literature would later be known for decades before the genre had a name. And at its core is a question that still unsettles us. Is love transformative, or is it survival mistaken for romance? We have now journeyed through the original Beauty and the Beast, not a children's fairy tale, but a Gothic horror story, a psychological survival manual, a nightmare disguised as romance, and beneath it all, a question that has never stopped haunting us. What do you do when the monster is the one you are expected to love? This is the nightmare beneath the dream. Welcome to the dark documentary series. The Beast is still waiting. Most versions of Beauty and the Beast end with transformation and light, with a kiss, with a promise of happiness. But the original story doesn't truly end there, because curses do not vanish simply because a monster becomes beautiful. And trauma does not disappear because a prison turns into a palace. So let's stay with the castle a little longer. Every night for months, the Beast asked Beauty the same question. Will you marry me? Not once, not twice, every single night. Imagine the effect of that repetition. To sit across from a creature who holds power over your life and your freedom, knowing the question is coming, preparing yourself to refuse it again and again. This wasn't romance. It was ritual. The Beast never forced her, and that is what makes it unsettling. Because when power waits patiently, when violence is withheld instead of delivered, the burden slowly shifts. Refusal begins to feel cruel. Consent begins to feel like relief. Beauty heard the Beast's loneliness. She heard his pain echoing through the castle at night, and without realizing it, she began to feel responsible for it. That is psychological captivity. Beauty was completely isolated. There were no friends, no other women, no one to tell her that what she was experiencing was strange or wrong. Only whispers in the walls, invisible servants, and the Beast. Isolation reshapes reality. When there is only one other person in your world, that person becomes the measure of everything. Kindness feels enormous. Cruelty feels intimate. Neutral behavior feels like mercy. The castle was luxurious, but it was still a cage. And a cage does not stop being a cage simply because it is beautiful. Beauty did not fall in love in freedom. She fell in love in containment. That matters. The dream prince who visited her each night was not just a romantic figure. He was an escape, a place her mind created when the waking world became too heavy to endure. Gentle, human, safe, dreams like that do not appear without reason. They appear when reality becomes unbearable. And the cruel irony is that the dream prince and the beast were the same person. Beauty's mind split him in two, monster in waking life, man in sleep. This is how the mind copes with fear, by separating danger from comfort, even when they come from the same source. The sister's punishment is often treated as justice, but it may be the most disturbing moment in the entire story. They are not killed, they are turned to stone. Conscious, aware, unable to move, speak, or die, forced to stand at the castle gates and watch Beauty's happiness forever. This is not mercy. It is eternal psychological torture, and it is carried out by the so-called good fairy, which tells us something unsettling about this world. Cruelty is acceptable as long as it is framed as moral correction. Authority decides who deserves happiness and who deserves endless suffering. No one questions it. The story ends with a wedding, but real life does not end there. Beauty marries the man who once imprisoned her. Yes, he was cursed. Yes, he changed. But memory does not reset when magic fades. What happens when she walks the halls and remembers being alone? What happens when she hears an echo and remembers the roar? What happens when love grows out of survival rather than choice? The original story does not ask these questions because it was not written to challenge the system that created them. It was written to help women survive it. Beauty and the Beast was not a fantasy of freedom. It was a manual for endurance. It told women to look for kindness where they could find it, to see past appearances, to hope that the monster might be a man underneath. Sometimes that hope was rewarded, often it was not. But rebellion was not an option. Refusal was not an option. Escape did not exist. So the story offered something else: meaning, structure, a way to survive the unavoidable. That is why this story still haunts us. Not because it is romantic, but because it is honest about fear, about power, about love born in captivity. The castle still stands in the forest. The roses still bloom impossibly, and the question is still being asked, will you marry me? And somewhere, someone is still deciding whether saying yes will save them or erase them. Even after everything we've examined, there is still one question the original story never resolves. Was Beauty's love truly free? Or was it the result of endurance finally giving way to acceptance? The story insists that love breaks the curse, but it never asks what price that love required. Beauty did not arrive at the castle by choice. She arrived because her father's life was threatened. Her freedom was exchanged for survival. That matters. From the moment she entered the castle, every option available to her was shaped by fear. Fear of death, fear of abandonment, fear of causing harm by refusing. When choice exists inside coercion, it stops being choice in the way we usually understand it. This doesn't make Beauty weak. It makes her human. Humans adapt. Humans normalize danger when it becomes routine. Humans find meaning where they must in order to keep living. That is not romance. That is resilience. And resilience is often mistaken for consent. The beast's restraint is frequently praised. He never touched her, never forced himself on her, never raised a hand against her. But restraint does not erase power imbalance. He controlled the castle, the servants, the magic, the rules. He controlled whether she ate, whether she could leave, whether her family lived or died. Kindness under absolute power is still power. This is why the nightly question matters so much. Will you marry me? It was not a proposal in the modern sense. It was a reminder that the situation was temporary only as long as he allowed it to be, that her refusal was permitted, not protected. Over time, refusal became heavier than agreement. That is how pressure works when it is subtle. The story rewards patience, but patience is not always virtue. Sometimes patience is just the absence of alternatives. The transformation of the beast into a prince is often framed as proof that Beauty was right to endure. That suffering led to truth, that the monster was never truly monstrous. But this raises an uncomfortable implication. What if the curse had never lifted? What if the beast had remained exactly as he was? Would Beauty's endurance still be praised? Would her love still be considered noble? Or would we see it for what it was? A life shaped around survival. The fairy tale only works because it promises reward. It reassures the listener that patience will be worth it. But real life does not guarantee transformation. In the real world, monsters often stay monsters. Cages remain cages, and love does not always redeem power. This is the danger of the story, not that it depicts captivity, but that it suggests captivity can be redeemed through affection. That is a comforting idea for those with power, and a dangerous one for those without it. The original audience understood this more clearly than we do. 18th century women did not read this story as fantasy. They read it as preparation. They knew marriage was not choice. They knew it was arrangement, obligation, and permanence. The story did not promise escape. It promised survival. Learn to see kindness. Learn to endure. Learn to hope. Hope was the only rebellion allowed, and even that hope had boundaries. Beauty's ultimate reward is not freedom. It is elevation. She does not escape the system. She rises within it. She becomes a queen. This is not accidental. The story reassures its audience that virtue will be recognized by authority, that obedience will be rewarded, that endurance will lead upward, not outward. But systems do not change when individuals are rewarded for surviving them. They remain intact. The sisters' punishment reinforces this idea. They are not forgiven. They are not educated. They are not offered redemption through growth. They are immobilized. Their crime was not cruelty alone. It was resistance. They refused to endure quietly. They resented their circumstances openly. They wanted more without accepting the cost. The story condemns that. Beauty suffers silently and is rewarded. The sisters complain and are destroyed. This is the moral framework of the tale, and it reflects the values of its time with unsettling clarity. So why does the story still resonate? Because the fear it addresses has not vanished. People are still trapped by circumstance, still bound by economic pressure, still navigating relationships shaped by power imbalance, and many are still told to be patient, to look for the good, to hope that love will make the cage disappear. Sometimes it does, often it does not. That ambiguity is what keeps the story alive. Beauty and the Beast is not comforting because it is safe. It is comforting because it offers meaning where safety is impossible. It tells us that suffering can be transformed into purpose, that endurance can be reframed as virtue, that survival can be mistaken for love, and that is both its power and its danger. The castle remains standing. The roses continue to bloom out of season. The question is still asked, softly, repeatedly, saying the same thing every night. Will you accept this life? And the answer then as now is never simple.